Well, it's snowing like crazy. And it's still coming down. It's like, what time is it? I don't know, 11 o'clock, something like that. I'm not really sure. In Connecticut, we just finished playing a Call of Cthulhu game, which was awesome. And I'm just kind of sitting here in my basement thinking about crap with my cat. And she's, yeah, where is she? She's hanging out over there. But I don't think you can really see just how much snow there is out there. Yeah, you probably can't. The light's not really going to help you too much, but there's a lot of snow, and it's not quite done. And so we took a look at the driveway and opened up the garage door, and you can kind of see how deep the snow is and stuff. And it's we're looking at each other and we're looking at the snowblower, going, oh man, that's a little bit nuts. And it's one of those things reminding me of so many times I've been in snowstorms where you look at the driveway and you're like, Jesus, how are we gonna shovel all that? We're never gonna get out of here. I remember one case in particular where I was living in an over-under kind of duplex, and there was another house that shared the driveway, and it was just a ton of snow, more than this. And I started shoveling, and another guy that I knew that was in the other apartment, who I was not very fond of, came down. As I think some other people came down because they felt kind of guilty that I was the only one doing it. And, Walt just really didn't want to be there. And they kept on saying, well, we're never going to get finished. We're never going to get done. And they finally, went inside, and which was good, just to get rid of him. I guess he was kind of a downer. But the thing is, we got out. We just had to shovel for a long time. And it was, one shovel at a time. And so that's what this is going to be like. And, that's what life is like. Because, I'll be honest with you, I'm looking at things in my life right now, and they seem insurmountable. They seem like these are things that I cannot reasonably accomplish. Or, how do I start? How do I quit my job? How do I make enough money to not have to work at this place that's killing me? How do I save up enough for like retirement? Because when you get to be of an age, you're looking at, like, geez, how am I going to do all this? And the truth is, you do it the same way. You do it like one day at a time, one little thing at a time. And that's very unsatisfying because very often it looks like nothing's happened. When you're shoveling out this big giant driveway. I've shoveled out some big giant driveways. Fortunately, this one is not. And, it's just, it seems like it's never ending. I remember one time, this sounds like, we walked uphill to school both ways, but I'm shoveling this driveway. It had to be 150 feet. It's like 6-foot drifts. And, I'm out there for a few hours and it looks like I've done nothing. And I eventually cleared the whole thing out, but that's the way life can be. And it just, you don't even know where it starts sometimes. And, I'm finding that in my life now. I don't know if you're finding that in your life sometimes, but you just don't know, where the hell do I actually start? I want to talk to Susan, on a chat sometime, because, she's much smarter than I am in a lot of ways. And we actually talked about a bunch of stuff today, and she's always just such a great sounding board, and a person that, grounds me and gives me a kind of like, hey, you think this might be really the case? Look, when I get a little off kilter. But she, wants to start a nursery school or a preschool. And there's a lot of steps that go into that. And it just seems insurmountable, all the things she would have to do. It seems insurmountable for me, doing YouTube, or looking at other ways that I could, make enough money to quit my job, whether it's multiple streams of income or whatever. And it just seems like just so daunting. Like, how am I really going to do that? I can have moments where I believe that's true, and I'm able to do it. And there's other moments where I'm like, man, what the hell made me think I could even do this? What made me think that I could shovel that whole driveway, if you will. And I think that happens to us over and over in life, where we feel that way, where we just look at everything and we can't see the trees for the forest. And it's just the next thing that's right in front of us that we need to take care of. And I think what's the most upsetting sometimes is when, all right, it's very upsetting to you that I'm not petting you enough, but what's the most upsetting sometimes is that we do something and it doesn't seem like it had any effect whatsoever on our situation. And it just seems that, you put that effort in and nothing happened. The needle didn't move. And it's one of those things where you have to just keep at it, day after day. And you don't see those. You don't see that minuscule step forward. But this book right here, I think it's one of these Narcotics Anonymous books because I'm in recovery, if you don't know. And there's something which always stuck with me, and it's on page 14 here. Of course, you don't have to be in recovery for this to make sense, but because you can apply this to anything. It's like it says the process of recovery isn't easy. It takes great courage and perseverance to continue in recovery day after day. Part of the recovery process is to move forward in spite of whatever may stand in our way, because long-lasting change and recovery happens slowly. We'll turn to the first step again and again. But that thing is, you can apply it to any part of life. It takes great courage and perseverance to continue in life day after day, because it can be rough. It can be overwhelming. It can be confusing. And you don't even have to be working towards a goal. You could just be trying to make it through the next frickin' day. Trying to just survive. And that can be really tough. It can be really draining. I think especially when you don't see light at the end of the tunnel. And so many of us get in this trap, and I've been in that trap for a while, where you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're just kind of lather, rinse, repeat. You're doing that one day at a time thing, but it doesn't seem to really be going anywhere because you don't really have any real goal in mind. It's just, I just want to get to bedtime. I just want to get to the end of the freaking day. And that's a terrible way to live, but so many of us live that way, and we're persevering, but it doesn't seem like it's leading to anything that's better. And that's one of those things where, at least for me, sometimes you need to step back and decide, well, okay, is this so bad? And I don't say that lightly, but I mean, am I just missing my life while I'm trying to just get through it? Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we just completely miss our lives as it's going on, because we're just so focused. I can be so focused on, all the places I want to get to, and I don't want to have to work this job anymore. And I wish I had more time with Susan. I wish I had more time where I wasn't worrying about bills. Whatever it is. Wish I had more time where I wasn't so fat. And you forget to actually experience the now. And that's one of those things that Susan and I talked about today a little bit, is because I've been distracted. And a lot of being distracted is just being worried about, are things going to work out? Are things going to work out financially? And it's awful to have that constant specter of finances over your head. But it could be a huge thing. And I get so distracted with stuff like that I forget to live life as it's happening right now, which in some cases means, petting my cat, or spending time with Susan, and doing the things that are important. And, it's easy. It can be really, really hard to forget to do the important things because you get so wrapped up in that. Having said that, if you are actually moving towards a goal as well, it just takes great perseverance, great courage and perseverance, because it doesn't happen overnight. And it's also not guaranteed, by the way, which sounds like a downer, but I believe in being realistic, or I believe in being honest and telling the truth. I believe it's possible to get wherever you want to go, but I believe you have to understand that it's not necessarily guaranteed. But there's risks in everything. Staying at your job is a risk, or deciding that that's what I'm going to do is a risk, because people can just get laid off so easily, and it's getting worse. One of the other things I've been wrestling with lately is, the idea that you could accept the things that you cannot change, which is so much of the things in the world, the way the world is, the system operates, the way the world is run, right down to the atrocities happening in America right now. And having that ability to accept the things you cannot change, don't let that run your life, but still identify some of those things as unacceptable. Like, this is not okay. And I had a talk with a friend of mine today about that sort of thing, because on the one hand, you can be too cavalier about it and dismiss it. Oh, there's nothing I can do about those things. They're things I can't change. Or the things I can't change by myself, or just are like that driveway. They're insurmountable. But there's also that time when you realize that, like, the only thing for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing, good people to do nothing. And there's times you need to at least identify and speak out against or do something about things that are unacceptable. It's one of the reasons I talk an awful lot about the way the system is, the way how it's structured, to protect the rich, to protect the powerful, and how it's more, it's becoming more and more difficult for regular people to make it. I just watched a guy had a video a while ago talking about why income inequality wasn't as big of a deal. And he had some interesting data, but it was only told half the story. And he talked about the idea there, the poverty level in the United States, the number of people in poverty has decreased. Okay, well, how do you define poverty? He talked a lot about the idea that people in the United States are actually, like, there's not as much inequality because some people are seeing their incomes go down. They were seeing a certain amount of downward mobility. But he's talking about the middle class. He's talking about the upper middle class. But there's that apex. There's those people that are really in charge of everything, that are really benefiting from everything, the people that really own the capital, the people that really, pull all the levers. And I'm not just talking about the Elon Musk types. I'm talking about, the 1% and the 0.01%. These people are not really going anywhere. They're not having, they're pretty secure in where their wealth and where their income is. The rest of people are seeing a decline in their income. I think the bottom tier, they've been screwed for a long time and they're still screwed. But the middle class is evaporating, and even the upper middle class is evaporating. They're seeing their mobility, go downwards. And one part of this guy's thesis was the idea that a lot of the people complaining about equality and wealth inequality are people that were thought they were going to be elite, and they're making less money than their mommy and daddy did. And yeah, those people are the people that are getting squeezed out of where they thought they were going. And so that's sad, although a lot of them are, taking on ridiculous college debts. But then there's all these other people that just can't freaking buy groceries, dude. And it was so disingenuous to hear him say that. And, these are things you kind of have to speak out against, is that, it's not okay that things are this way economically. They don't have to be this way economically. So there's things that, can't change, but I don't need to accept them either. I can accept them that they exist, but I still can talk about them being unacceptable and need to do something about it and be at least another voice. And there's other things, the things happening in Minnesota right now are just unacceptable. It's not cool. It's not okay. And there's times that people will say, well, you just stay home. And nothing's going to happen to me because I'm going to stay home. And, a lot of people stayed home and didn't say anything in 1938. And the people that are reminding us of that live in Germany. They know their history really well. And it's not cool. It's not cool what's happening. And it requires people to say something about it. Who knows what's actually going to happen in the long run. Things are pretty ugly, and they're probably going to get a lot uglier, which is very concerning. And there's times that, Susan and I have talked about, well, do we want to move? And that's one of those things that, while I find other places in the world fascinating, I didn't ever think that I was going to consider moving because the country that I lived in became unsafe. But now we're getting to the point where it's not safe. And that's not cool, And, These things are unacceptable. And it's unacceptable that the people that could do something about it, people in power, haven't. While they certainly could have. And they're being dared, go ahead, do something. And they just back off and don't do anything about it. And I guess let the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of what town is it? Minneapolis. They're letting them be the guinea pigs. That's not cool. It's not cool when, and I don't want to go on a political rant, but that's not cool when one of the senators from my state goes and visits a detention center, doesn't get granted access, and then just says, well, I wasn't granted access. I'm mad. You should be mad too. Go do something about it, Charlie. His name's not Charlie, but you know what I mean? Go do something about it, pal. Put your money where your mouth is. Stop worrying about whether you're going to get reelected and, grow a set. And a lot of people just haven't grown a set. And that's sad. So that's one of those things that's concerning. These are things that are too big. These are things that we can't really change. It's a much, much bigger driveway. We can work towards changing those things, but any one person can't. It's going to take quite a bit of effort by quite a few people. But, while I can accept these things, that they exist, I can still say, well, they're not okay. And still, talk about it. And talk about it intelligently, not yell and scream and point fingers, because we're tribal enough as it is. And that, splits people apart all the time. It's just all this ridiculous tribalism. And the thing about talking about the system and the elites, it's not to create class warfare. I mean, there's already not even class warfare. I mean, the upper class has already won. It's not really warfare. It's about, hey, things need to be fair. Things need to be equitable. It's not just about like who gets to have their turn at the top. It's about like, hey, let's make things fair for everybody, because we're all human beings. We all deserve, certain rights, a certain amount of dignity. And when all the assets are being held by a small group of people, that's not cool. There are other things this fellow talked about in his equality video, which, once again, were disingenuous. Talked a lot about the idea that it's not zero-sum in terms of wealth, that more wealth is being created. And, well, yes and no. There are plain old real resources that we don't get to increase. Things like land, things like, arable land, and, just land that's in a prime spot, which becomes worth more. There are things like natural resources and precious metals and fuel and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we can dig more up, but it's still on somebody's land, and it's not, getting it out is prohibitively expensive. So there's a certain amount, we're getting more out, but it's limited, it's finite. And those don't change much. And there's things like real estate and actual buildings and what have you, and that are real resources. They're more vulnerable because they can age, they can burn down, they can rust, factory equipment, all that kind of stuff. And those are things where, the people that have a lot of money can own a bunch of those assets. And, if those assets fail, if they own a chunk of the World Trade Center and it gets, bombed by a plane, they don't lose everything because they have quite a few assets. But then you have people like you and I, where like our asset might be our home or our time. And that's the only asset we have, really. And it's vulnerable. Our time is vulnerable because, as things get more efficient, well, our time is actually worth less. And we only have a finite amount of it. And the resources that can affect our lives, like the faster means of production, all those things like factory equipment and stuff, can benefit our lives, but we don't actually own the actual asset. It's something we can benefit from, but still at the end of the day, the majority of the assets are in the hands of the wealthy. And, all the other things that we, innovation and whatnot, yes, you can kind of count those as assets, but once again, those are transitory. They're not something that's really shared by everybody. So it's very disingenuous. For the most part, you see the houses moving from us to them. Housing prices might double in the next 5 years. I don't know. But they don't show any signs of stopping. And I look at things like, my mother's house. When my mother passes away, my brother and I, would be the sole inheritors. And, do we sell the house? Or do I, buy him out and keep the house because it's a real resource that it was probably never going to be purchasable again by any of my descendants unless they get really wealthy. Things like that, that's literally what's happening. Those things aren't okay either. There are things like wealth tax and more progressive income tax, which is able to redistribute enough of the wealth that it doesn't all end up at the top, because wealth and power begets more wealth and power. And they're not going to give any away. Not going to give any away willingly. And just that's the truth of the thing. And while I'm not into, I'm not suggesting we abandon capitalism. What I am suggesting is there are things that are unacceptable that we need to do something about. And they're too big for one person, and they're too big to rule your life. Like you don't want to base your happiness on the economic situation, or the way the world is structured, or the fact that our country is going to hell in a handbasket and people seem to be looking the other way. And a large amount of the population seems to be okay with it. Things like that are distressing, but they're not okay. And they're really big, but they're not okay. What we can do in our own lives, the driveway, if you will, the metaphorical driveway full of snow is smaller, but it still looks so frickin' insurmountable. And, that's one of the things I still haven't figured out, still wrestling with. It's like, how much mental energy do I spend on these things that are more global, that are unacceptable, talking about them or advocating for change, or, in the case of like, if things really go crazy, doing something, being more active about it. And taking care of things in my own life, to at least make my little corner of the world better, and to make my own life better, so I can be better for the people around me, and can be more helpful for the people around me. And figuring out how to parse all that up, that's tough. That's something I still haven't quite figured out. And I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom, but things could get super ugly in the country. If we're at war, well, we don't have to have midterm elections. And then you see a lot of people going to the streets at that point. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen? And I don't like living in a world that's this unstable. And we've been sheltered in the United States. We really have. I think 9/11 was one of the first things that people of my generation saw, where we were like, holy shit. And the world is changing. I don't think we're going to ever see the world that we grew up with, because on a global scale, things are kind of changing. They're getting more totalitarian. They're getting more towards, capitalism, government capitalism, which is kind of more like a Chinese thing, apparently, where they actually do have capitalism in the normal sense, but there's also government-controlled industries, which is one of the reasons they're so competitive, because there's industries that no business is going to put money into because it's just too big of an operation, or the profits are too far down the line. But the government knows that it's a thing that needs to be done. And so they've been kind of a behemoth financially. Their growth outpaces ours by a ridiculous amount. But things are changing. And it's also changing the way that countries treat each other, and the kind of leaders that people pick. People are scared. And a lot of people start picking leaders that seem tough and are going to take care of things. And well, they do. But it's not always nice. And, so I worry about the world that my grandchildren are going to live in, and the world that my children are living in, what Sue's children are living in, because it's a little frightening. I was frightened during the Cold War because, I remember seeing the movie The Day After. I think they even showed that to us in school. We had to watch The Day After. Maybe it was in middle school, and we're all just like, freaked out when they show us the the end of the world cataclysm. I remember being scared to death of nuclear war. My dad gave me Hiroshima to read by John Hershey when I was really young, and read another book on Hiroshima. But I knew what nuclear war was. And, until the Cold War ended, I was scared. I would hear like jets and wonder, was that a missile? And I haven't been scared of things going off the rails in a long time. And, now I'm a little scared of things going off the rails again. There's a lot of wackos, in this country included, that, if they do the wrong thing at one time, it sets off a powder keg that none of us walk away alive from alive. And that's, it's bananas. And then even if it doesn't come to that, just the amount of brutality and terror that can happen. And there's other areas of the world where this is commonplace all the time. Sudan, people aren't doing anything about Sudan. Because it tends not to, some of it's racism and some of it's just it tends not to affect a lot of other people. And it's awful what's happening in there with a couple of warlords just fighting the hell out of each other, and people are dying all the time. But it's coming to, that kind of reality is coming to the first world, I guess we're going to call it. It's coming here. And that's upsetting. That's upsetting. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. This is just musings during the snowstorm. I still believe firmly that we make our own meaning in life. There isn't an inherent meaning. We make it. And the world doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, we don't matter. We're a speck on a little speck, in the great big huge universe. On a cosmic scale, we're a blip. And nobody's even going to know that we were here. However, I believe that we also can make our lives matter. We make our own meaning. Might not matter in the grand scheme of things, but, well, who cares? I want my life to matter. I hope that you want your life to matter. I hope that you want to matter to other people. That you want to leave behind, not just leave behind a legacy, but, affect the people in your life now and affect them in a positive way. I want to leave a contribution. And, I also want to matter. When I do things like play music, for that moment I matter, and I'm important, or at least I'm noticeable. Because I think for a lot of my life, one of the things that, I felt the most acutely was that I didn't matter, that people didn't want me around, that I wasn't good enough. And I don't know how much that is due to being somewhat neurodivergent, or, the upbringing I had and the circumstances of my life. I don't know what it is, but I know that mattering is important. I know that, at least being treated like a human being is important. And, I'm the kind of person that, if somebody ignores me, I lose my shit. But that angers because, I want to kind of shake them like, listen, I matter, motherfucker. And you matter too. But the thing is, we have to make our own meaning. I firmly believe that we do that, and I firmly believe that, you can't just look at all the negative things that are going on. And believe me, they're there. I'm not saying don't look at them. I'm saying don't focus all of your energy there. Don't do nothing about them. Don't be completely inactive. Don't just pretend they're not there and play ostrich and stick your head in the sand. Because, that can cause things to be much, much worse. Like the people that never said anything in Germany, or imagine if the people that put together labor unions never did anything. Imagine if a lot of the legislation that happened in the early part of last century never happened. And hopefully it happens. Hopefully it gets strengthened again. People have to do something. But there's all that other part of life that's beautiful and wonderful, and where there's possibility, and where we can just enjoy life. Like, I mean, as much as, you know, I have to shovel the snow, I think it's beautiful. I think it's awesome. This is great. It was great spending time with Susan. It was great playing games with my friends tonight. There's so much beauty and wonderful things in life. And, you know, hopefully I get to talk to my grandchildren tomorrow. You know, I missed them today. But, you know, they're snowed home too, so I got to give them a ring and do some FaceTime with them. There's so many great things in life. And no, we can't be, you know, ignorant or just pretend the other things don't exist. But just focus our attention more there. You know, try to live the best life we can. You know, because it's up to us whether we're to be miserable or not miserable. And I don't mean that in a, you know, fake pop psychology kind of way. Because some people's lives, sometimes our lives can be effing miserable and awful and hard. And I've been there, and I'm sure you've been there, and then some people have it worse. I'm not saying that, but as much as possible to try to, you know, take the time to experience life and enjoy it for what it is, and to help others around you. Not just to be selfish and looking out for yourselves all the time, but see the people that need help and do something about it. See the people that need to be advocated for and say something. You know, don't just feel sorry for people. Do something about it. Hey, what's going on? And, you know, take the time to be with the people you love, to do the things that really matter. Because we make our own meaning. I know I said that about 50 times. But that's part of what's important. And that's one of the things, like right now, that I you know, came to this epiphany, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna have to start shoveling. I haven't done any yet, man. Not at all. You know, so I got to go out there and do it. We're not really sure if we're gonna start tonight or do it tomorrow, but it's pretty heavy duty. But that's one of those things, you know, when I just kind of radically shifted the channel, I just had this moment of like, listen, man, I am not living the life I want. And it wasn't that I wanted a mansion and a yacht. That'd be nice. That wasn't it. It's just I'm sick of doing crap that doesn't bring me any joy. You know, the job I worked didn't bring me any joy, and it sucked everything out of me, so I couldn't enjoy the rest of life. And, you know, when I was in addiction, that was terrible. And that, you know, I needed to look at, you know, I looked at that, you know, 13 and a half years ago and said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I need a different kind of life. So I changed a lot of stuff. And it was like shoveling that big long driveway. It took a while to get my head clear. But thank God I did. But I just, you know, just recently, I just like, you know, I'm not living the life I want anymore. Or, you know, I've been following a script, I've been following a set of instructions, that, you know what, why the hell was I doing that? It's just because everybody else was. And realizing, hey, there are things that are important to me that I put down because I was supposed to be a responsible adult. And I'm not saying don't be responsible, but damn it, if I want to go play in a rock band, all right, fine, I gotta go do that. If I want to go play role-playing games with my friends, I'm gonna do that. If I'm going to, you know, decide, you know what, I don't want to go to that party. I don't want to go to this social event because I just don't effing care. I can say that. If there's family that I do not want to spend time with because it's toxic, I can say, yeah, you know, I'm not gonna do that, guys. You know, I'm gonna do the things that bring me happiness and bring me joy. And if other people think they're silly, well, they can go screw themselves. If people get offended, you know, they can go screw themselves as long as I'm not hurting anybody else. You know, and sometimes there's things that I might do that might actually hurt somebody. Like if I don't want to spend time with family members that are you know, drain me and you know, or it's too traumatic and I don't want to go into the whole detail, that might hurt their feelings, but I'm not harming them. And, you know, there's times I have to figure, well, what's the best thing for me to do? And, you know, but part of what I realized is that, like, you know what, I'm not living the life, part of what's preventing me from living the life I want is I'm just not making enough money. And financial concerns, so I need to figure out some way to either spend less or make more or both. and do it in a job or a business that I don't hate. And it sucks that that's part of what we have to do. It really is. It really sucks that, things are set up in such a way that it's harder to make a living than it was at one time. And there's a whole bunch of things we can point to. I'd probably make a video about the Industrial Revolution and what happened. And it's like Walmart squeezing out all the mom and pop stores, but on a grand scale. And all of a sudden people were, they flocked to the cities, not because they thought the cities were great, but because they had no freaking choice at that point. Their other way of life had been destroyed. And so now they end up going and working in factories. And we're inheriting that same freaking mindset. Bullshit. Things like that aren't acceptable. And I finally decided, dude, I try to do something else. And maybe it's foolish to think that I could succeed on YouTube. Maybe it is. Or if that would be, I don't know. And there's people that blow up on it. And I don't want to be a millionaire. Yeah, I mean, sure, everyone wants to be a millionaire. But, I just want to not have to work the job that I hate. And if I could do something of value for other people, so be it. And there's channels I absolutely love that, that I just like the person. And they have a big enough following. And some of them talk about, well, yeah, I'm full-time now. Dude, I like doing this. Why the hell not? But there's times I wonder, man, am I just being foolish? Am I just being stupid? Should I just resign to working jobs that I hate for the rest of my life? And that's not just neurosis. There's part of that that's kind of baked into the way we're programmed and conditioned. Because, man, if all of us stopped working, our jobs, and did something else, well, who's going to work in their factories? Who's going to make their shit? If we stop buying their stupid crap, that's most of which is designed to break, well then, man, how are they going to get their money? if more of us say, screw this, I'm buying my own house, I'm not going to pay you rent anymore, who am I going to, you get the idea. We don't need to be held hostage by these frickin' people. We don't need to be held hostage by the system. But man, it's a long metaphorical driveway to shove out. It's not something that you can just do overnight. If I could quit my job and live in an alleyway until I made it big, but that's insane. That's insane. That's one of the most frustrating things about this trip I've noticed is that it just takes so much time. Just takes so much time, and every day you're wondering, is there light at the end of the tunnel? Is this just a fool's errand? Am I not good enough, or is this, you start doubting yourself in a million different ways. Am I not relevant? Do people not like me? Do I just sound ridiculous? And I don't care if I make a fool of myself. I've done that enough times already in my life. It's okay. And I think a lot of people are just stuck there. And they think to myself, man, if I do anything different in my life, well, am I just going to look foolish? Am I going to look foolish to, going skydiving? Am I going to look foolish, going and doing art again? Not quitting my job, but just doing art. Maybe have an art show. I mean, is this just stupid? And, and if we really think of yeah, I want to, screw this job I'm working, I want to do something else, whatever it is, to get out of that, is that really going to work? Or am I just being really stupid? We've just been taught not to think outside the box. And, I, for one, am sick of all that crap. I'm sick of being under control by other people. Because let's face it, right now, other people tell me when to get up, where to go, who to talk to, how to talk to them, when I can go to sleep, how far away from my house I can go, all that kind of stuff. And then there's, all the other bullshit as far as, whatever, income crap. And now, apparently I can't speak my mind on and say, hey, I don't believe in what you're doing. Don't beat these people up because you might get shot. It's not cool. And, I don't think we should be cool with that. I don't think we should be cool with any of it. We're not here to be oppressed. We're not here to be pawns for somebody else. We're not here to be somebody else's resources. You're a human being. I'm a human being. We have the right to be autonomous and to have agency over our own life. And, we need to reclaim that agency. Or at least that's the only way we're going to get it back. I don't know. I think that's enough musing for tonight. Just things that have been on my mind that I figured I'd just kind of like vomit out and see if it made any sense to anybody. Thanks for anybody that was actually watching during this, and maybe somebody will watch it afterwards. I don't know. I think I'm going to start doing a live stream on a regular basis. I just can't figure out like what night to do it on, where it could be like a, every week sort of thing. That'd be kind of fun to do, a regular sort of thing, because I'd love to see if I can get some interaction with people, maybe some Q&A. What do you think about this, Ivan? Anyhow, thanks a lot for watching. I will talk to you people later. It's been pretty awesome. And, enjoy the snowstorm and see if you can make it through the shoveling or snowballing or whatever you got. But enjoy it. And hey, if you can get more than Monday off, you can get like Tuesday or Wednesday off, go do that. Take it easy. Yes, I want to stop screaming. Streaming.